how did ancient armies tell friend from foe? Or in other words, try and neglect friendly fire? Now this is quite a common question that comes up, and it's a very fair question to ask. How did you differentiate between people who were on your side in battle and people that you were supposed to be fighting? Now, of course, Hollywood has a big role to play in this misconception. As always, those guys have a tendency of doing that, which is, of course, in many movie battles, you have no formational combat. You have two sides running in and fighting people dually. How do you tell who is who? How do you know if they're on your side or the enemy's? This is a bit of a double-layered answer and two sort of different situations that come up. Firstly, broadly addressing the point. Most ancient battles are relatively simple. You have your side in a battle line against an enemy in a battle line, and you march up to each other basically doing the same thing, and you fight who's in front. As long as you keep that line, which, let's face it, if you broke that, you would probably be fleeing and leaving the field, getting chased. As long as you were in your battle line facing another army that was in a battle line, you could tell who you were fighting. It was the people approaching you. Quite simply, you don't really need any identifier or city-state blazon or any form of, tag that signifies that you're an Athenian against a Theban phalanx. It was just whoever was approaching you, you were fighting, and vice versa. So we do have accounts of friendly fire happening in an ancient battlefield context. However, typically, when battles don't go typically, if that makes sense. So when battles go differently to the sort of typical armies marching up and facing off, we have a very famous instance at the Battle of Delium, which was a Peloponnesian War era battle. And forgive me as I haven't refreshed myself in the battle that much. I believe it was Athens versus Corinth or Thebes, one of the two. And Socrates is actually fighting there, and this is where he's sort of standing over Alcibiades' body and doesn't flee when his army runs away. But we have an instance where the Athenians essentially try and flank and wrap around their opponent's phalanx, which of course is quite a good move. If you can get around them, then you can probably pick them off. However, what happens is the wings of the Athenian side wrap around and actually face each other, and they can't identify them as Athenians. They actually start fighting each other. We have Athenians fighting Athenians after they've successfully wrapped around the Theban phalanx. They can't identify who they are fighting against. And understandably, that's a bit of a problem, but we have to realize that, why is that the case? It's because they probably don't have any, red team or blue team going on here. And previously, for most of hoplite warfare, you were just fighting the people coming up to you. In this case, the people who happen to be facing you now happen to be people from your own force who've wrapped around, but you don't know. You think that they're your opponents, so you start fighting them. There is another sort of famous incident, which is a little bit more understandable, perhaps, which involves Argos within the Athenian army, and they sing the Peloponnesian or Laconian paean, so they're sort of chanting war song, and they get attacked. And of course, that's a little bit more understandable. If you're used to hearing that coming from, Spartan-controlled armies, you're going to assume that's probably Sparta or Sparta's allies, so you will attack that mass. However, that's another instance where your allied force you can't really identify from your opposing force. So the Argives allies actually attack the Argive phalanx because they're singing a different war chant to them. And because Argos was in the Peloponnese, that was probably just their native chant. So a little bit unfair for them there. And this is something that's interesting because we often think, from a modern lens, we have uniforms and a lot of things, but we don't really see uniforms appearing until, quite late in military history. In the medieval period, we don't really see uniforms. It's maybe, like age of gunpowder, really, that you start to see uniforms sort of taking place. We don't see it in the ancient world really at all. And that's one reason people often think Sparta had the lambda, Athens had the owl, Sparta dressed in red, Athens dressed in blue, but we really have no evidence to support that. Except a few literary mentions of Spartans donned in phoenicus, which is just a type of dye which can produce red, but we don't know, and this is a late source from Xenophon as well, we don't know, is this, all of their chitons are donned in phoenicus? Is phoenicus purple? Is phoenicus red? We actually don't know. Again, is it a cloak? Is it a chiton? We don't know. So decent evidence to suggest that the Spartans did wear phoenicus, which was an expensive dye and was probably red. But whether this was an archaic or early classical addition, we don't know. And otherwise, as far as we're aware, no other polis all dressed in in blue or yellow or what have you. It was, you know, your chiton was your dress. It was your t-shirt of the ancient world, although invariably you dress up in your poshest clothes to go into battle. So long story short, we don't see concretely state symbols or state colours being used until possibly later, when we start to see the adoption of possible state-issued blazons or symbols to basically identify you as Laconian or you as Athenian or you as Theban, so on and so forth. And it's highly likely or highly possible that Delium might have played a massive role in that. As phalanx warfare started to get a little bit less simple, as just two armies marching up to each other, the need for actually identification became much greater, and he did not want to recreate that situation where you are attacking your own. So, a little bit of a recap. In short, typically you weren't really having to worry about identifying your friends if you were in the same battle line, who were your friends. If that battle line broke, you were typically running away, so you're still not really fighting, you know, in a broken up formation. It only really starts to become a problem when you start to try and make these relatively untrained men do maneuvers that were perhaps ideal for people who have been trained. So when you break up the simplicity of line warfare and sort of do different things like that, or a case of literally singing a different call sign, essentially. So I hope that you found that interesting and learned a little bit there. Thanks very much for watching this video. If you'd like to support the channel further, please consider checking out our channel memberships. They are a great help, and of course a special thanks to our channel members who continue to support the channel. If not, no worries at all. That is of course completely okay. Liking the video and subscribing does a massive amount for the channel, and also sharing these videos to people who also have an interest in this stuff, as our community here on the grand scheme of the internet is quite small. Thanks very much for watching this video, and I hope to catch you in the next one.